You know, when you hear human resources, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably paperwork, right? Payroll. But what if it's actually the engine that powers a company's most important asset, its people? Well, today, we're going to unpack that whole employee journey, from the very first job ad all the way to their ongoing growth, and we'll see it all through the eyes of modern HR. All right, let's get into it.
And this quote, this really hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures the big shift we're seeing. See, human resource management, or HRM, it's not about managing numbers on a spreadsheet anymore. It's about leading people. It's all about figuring out what makes them tick and creating a place where they can actually, do their best work and thrive.
So, okay, what's the textbook definition? Well, think of it like this. HRM is all about building these formal systems, these structured ways of doing things that solve one huge fundamental challenge. And that challenge is, how do you hit your company's goals while also meeting the needs and expectations of your employees? It's a balancing act for sure, and getting that balance right, that's the whole game.
All right, so every great employee story has to start somewhere. Let's kick things off with Chapter 1, the search for talent. I mean, how do companies even begin to find the right person for the right job? And it all starts with a really simple but super important question. Before you can even think about posting a job ad or bringing people in for interviews, you've got to do your homework. This first step is called the job analysis, and it's basically a deep dive to figure out every single thing about a role, the tasks, the challenges, you name it. Because let's be real, you can't find the right person if you don't even know what you're looking for, right?
So that whole analysis process gives you two super critical documents. First, you've got the job description. That's the what. It's the list of roles and responsibilities. But then you have the job specification, and that's the who. This is where you outline the knowledge, the skills, and, this is a big one, the attitudes needed for the job. We're talking about things like being a team player or having a positive mindset. People call it the KSA framework, and trust me, you absolutely need both of these to find the perfect fit.
Okay, so once you have a crystal clear picture of the role, HR hits this major fork in the road. It's a big strategic choice. Do you go with a make strategy, meaning you promote someone who's already in the company? That's internal recruitment. Or do you go with a buy strategy and bring in fresh talent from the outside? And believe me, both of those paths have their own unique pros and cons.
Finding the right person isn't some kind of magic trick. It's actually a pretty logical process, kind of like a sales funnel. You start super wide at the top, just trying to make people aware the job exists. Then you try to generate some interest and attract them to actually apply. From that point on, it's all about narrowing things down, screening resumes, doing interviews, until, boom, you found your perfect hire. It's this methodical journey from a huge crowd down to just one person.
But this is where the human part of human resources gets, well, a little messy. Because anytime you have people making decisions about other people, things aren't going to be perfectly rational. We all have these built-in biases, these mental shortcuts that can cause us to make some pretty unfair judgments. And a lot of the time, we don't even know we're doing it.
Okay, here's a classic one. Let's say you're interviewing someone and find out they went to the same college as you. All of a sudden, you're thinking, wow, this person is brilliant. That's the halo effect in action. Just one positive thing creates this halo that makes you see everything else about them in a better light. Now, this next one is really subtle, but it is so powerful. Picture this. You just finished interviewing a candidate who was just awful, a total disaster. Then, the very next person who walks in is pretty average, just okay. But compared to the last person, they seem like an absolute rock star. That, my friends, is the contrast effect. You're not really judging them on their own merit, you're judging them in contrast to who you saw right before them. And of course, they're stereotyping. It's basically a lazy mental shortcut where we make these broad generalizations about someone just because of a group they belong to. And look, it's not just deeply unfair, it's also just plain bad for business. It means you could be passing up on some absolutely incredible talent. That's why a huge part of modern HR is building systems that are designed to fight these biases head-on.
So, you did it. You navigated the biases, you found your superstar, and they've accepted the offer. The journey's over, right? Nope, not even close. In fact, you could argue that the next 90 days are the most important part of the entire employee journey. This is where you either set them up for massive success or for failure. I mean, think about it. Starting a new job is super stressful. You don't know anyone, you don't get the inside jokes, you don't know the unwritten rules. So the whole point of a good onboarding process is to manage that stress and to give that new person a really clear, realistic picture of what's expected of them. It's all about helping them get plugged into the company culture.
And we're talking about way more than just a half-day session filling out paperwork. A really powerful approach is something called ROPES. It stands for a Realistic Orientation Program for New Employee Stress. Just think of it like an intense boot camp. It can last for weeks or even months, and it's all designed to get a new hire completely integrated and ready for long-term success. Okay, so once an employee is all settled in, the HR journey kind of shifts gears. It's less about getting them up to speed and more about keeping them motivated. How do you keep your best people engaged? How do you help them grow so they actually want to stick around for the long haul? Well, that's exactly what we're jumping into next.
And this diagram really shows that long-term view perfectly. See, HR isn't a straight line with a beginning and an end. It's a continuous cycle. You've got staffing, that's what we just covered. Then that feeds into development, training people and growing their skills. That leads to motivation. And then finally maintenance, which is just about keeping everything running smoothly. And then the whole thing just starts over again.
So the big question is, how do you keep people motivated? The old school answer was easy, just pay them more. But today, with everyone competing for top talent and with people expecting a lot more from their jobs, that simple answer just doesn't cut it. The approach now is way more holistic. We call it total rewards. It's the entire package, all the financial stuff and all the non-financial stuff that makes a job feel truly rewarding.
So let's break that down a bit. Of course, you've got the basics, like your base pay and your health insurance. But total rewards also includes things like variable pay, think commissions or bonuses. And, this is really important, it also includes non-financial incentives. Things like public recognition, awards, feeling appreciated. It's the whole ecosystem of how a company values its people.
And here's a really cool way that companies are personalizing all this. It's this idea of cafeteria-style benefits. So instead of getting the same one-size-fits-all package as everyone else, employees get to actually pick and choose the benefits that they care about most. Maybe for you, that's more vacation time. But for your coworker, it's better health insurance or help with childcare. It's all about choice.
All right, so we've followed the journey all the way from recruitment to rewards. For our conclusion, let's zoom out a bit and look at the really big picture. What is the strategic role that HR is supposed to play in a company today?
Well, according to this really influential model by a guy named Dave Ulrich, a truly great HR department doesn't just do one thing. It has to wear 4 completely different hats. It has to play 4 distinct roles to really serve the organization and its people.
And here are those 4 roles. First, HR has to be a strategic partner, making sure the people strategy lines up with the business strategy. They also have to be an administrative expert, making sure all the boring but important stuff runs smoothly. Then they're a change agent, helping the company through big shifts. And finally, maybe most importantly, they are the employee champion, the person in the room who's always advocating for the employees.
And that brings us to a final question I want to leave you with. In today's world, with all the rapid change, remote work, and constantly shifting expectations, which of those 4 faces of HR do you think is the most critical for success right now? The strategist, the administrator, the change leader, or the employee champion? There's probably no easy answer, but it's definitely a question worth thinking about.